Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Winter Sports in Focus session. This is being delivered in partnership between NPD and SIA, and we'll explore the consumers, categories, and the best practices of our industry. I'm Laura Hills. I'm the Director of Client Development for NPD Sports and Outdoor. I'm based in Boulder, Colorado in our office here, and I've been in the outdoor and snow industry for over 10 years on both the manufacturer and sales side, as well as the specialty retail side of the business. And then for the last 5 years, I've been with NPD helping both brands and retailers leverage the marketplace data for better business decisions. The agenda I have for us today is outlined here. So I'm going to walk us through a quick summary of who NPD is for those of you that aren't familiar with us. I'll touch on a couple of the macro retail and consumer trends that we're tracking for the total US. And then I'll walk through some of the major themes of what we're seeing happening across sports retail before I get more granular with our categories and trends, specifically within our snow market, those being apparel, accessories, and equipment. And then lastly, I'll take us through what we're hearing from retailers, as well as guidance from your peers in the industry on how you can and should be leveraging this data in your business. So about NPD, if you're not familiar with us, we are a global organization. We have operations in 19 countries across the world. Our data, whether it's consumer or point of sale based, it's considered the data of record by the industries that we track. We've been in business for over 50 years, working with the world's leading brands and retailers. And because NPD tracks over 20 industries at retail, it's what allows me to talk to you today, not just about what's happening down to the item level granularity within, the key snow business categories, but also allows me to give you a total retail perspective on what we're seeing across the US landscape. And specifically in sports business at NPD, we cover all categories from apparel to footwear to equipment to accessories. And specifically for winter sports business, we have everything from the top to the bottom of the mountain. So now let's look at what's happening at the macro level for US retail trends. So here we've charted the overall market movement in terms of percent change of dollars and units sold at a weekly level versus the year prior. So this reflects really almost all of 2020 compared to 2019. Certainly our lowest of lows were in the early to mid stages of March when stores across the nation were shuttered. The government stimulus, brought us back from that and contributed to the growth that we saw midsummer. The shift of Amazon Prime Day from summer into the fall, that greatly contributed to that dip that you see late summer and to the peak in dollars sold in October when Prime Day occurred this year. And while the traditional holiday shopping days of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, those showed, rather lackluster performance. The shopping season started earlier this year, and overall holiday spending at retail really was up over last year, surprisingly, but thanks to consumers having shifted dollars from things like travel into gifting of retail goods. So what we saw for the week ending December 26th, that was up 13% in dollars sold and 8% in units. And although e-commerce shopping really saw, record heights this year as more and more consumers, particularly boomers, adopted the habit of shopping online in lieu of venturing into stores. As this graph on the left shows, this line chart, by the end of 2020, brick and mortar store purchase receipts have actually climbed back really to almost pre-pandemic levels. So you can see online on the top there has been up considerably in terms of, purchase receipts week over week compared to the year prior. Total retail has grown as I spoke about on the last slide. So we're up, at the end of this year, we're up compared to where we were last year. And then store is just slightly behind last year. And as the subtitle suggests, the extra holiday shopping days that we had the week of Christmas certainly helped us along. So now what's happening with total sports business across US retail? As with total retail, it's been a mixed performance out of our sports and outdoor businesses because we do track everything from apparel to footwear to equipment to accessories. However, sport and active centric segments within each of those categories, in most instances, have fared much better this year than their fashion counterparts. So the first one up there, active apparel, in our POS track channels is down 5%. It's almost a $30 billion business, but non-active apparel is down 20%. So active apparel, while declining, is still, faring much better than fashion business right now. The next one, athletic footwear, that's a $21 billion business. That is also down just 5% compared to a 28% drop in fashion footwear business dollars this year. And then outdoor equipment and accessories, some really terrific growth here. It's a $12 billion business that's showing up 17% for the 12 months ending November. This outdoor equipment growth is really driven by high ticket items like grills and kayaks, backyard smokers, things that allowed people to be outside, but, stay close to home. And then also several other categories like camp chairs and shelters and rec tents were also part of this, as a lot of participants or consumers look to, be active outside, but at a socially distance. The next one is team sports equipment. That's $7.9 billion business, up 13%. This grew with golf being far and a fairway the leader in dollars sold to this market. It was followed by golf, followed by basketball, and then racket sports were also popular this year as well. And then cycling business, $8.5 billion business, up 50% is what we're showing for this 12-month rolling view. But know that within that number, the industry saw growth of 81% just in the months between April and July. So that was before they suffered pretty severe inventory shortages in just about every facet, from bikes themselves to every component that goes into them. So not a single category within cycling shows less than a 20% growth for this rolling year ending November. So really tremendous performance there. And then lastly, health and fitness equipment. This growth is, of course, in response to gyms and fitness studios closing and consumers looking to expand their home fitness options. The growth ranges from major purchases like treadmills and stationary bikes to smaller ones like free weights and weight benches, but goes all the way down to yoga mats and other small accessory items. And then with the addition of November data, this category jumped from showing 50% growth back in September to an incredible 75% growth after we captured Prime Day, those competitor sales in October, and then of course, the holiday shopping days in November. So while the apparel and footwear markets have faced really strong headwinds over the last year, 2020 has no doubt been the year of equipment. So let's talk specifically about now what we've been seeing in our snow business so far this season. So what I'm going to show you is data through November. We begin tracking in August. So it's the 4 months ending November 2020 that much of the rest of the data in this presentation is going to be reflective of. So overall season to date, the industry is registering dollar declines of 7%, unit declines of 10%, and an average selling price growth of 4%. According to or accounting for all categories tracked within snow, which are apparel, accessories, and equipment, we look at the channel share of business for this industry. So there in the pie chart on the left, you can see that the snow chain channel, those are your bigger box retailers. They represent 45% of the dollars sold across each of those categories, or the roll-up of those categories rather. And then snow specialty is 28% share of the industry in terms of dollars sold. And then snow internet is just shy of that, 27% share of the dollars sold in the snow industry so far this season. And then looking to the charts on the right, we see that viewing snow chain standalone and then snow specialty and snow internet together, we see that the channel sets have really fared quite similarly. So snow chain down 6%, and the combination of snow internet and snow specialty down 8%. As is true of the bulk of US retail, throughout the pandemic impacted months, e-commerce and internet have done very, very well, but the growth there hasn't been enough to offset the declines that were happening at brick and mortar from in-store business. And then mapping the size of the major super categories of apparel, equipment, and accessories in terms of dollars sold, you can see that on the left. And then in the chart on the right, this will show you the performance based on absolute change. We see that apparel, there at the top is far and away the largest business, and is responsible for over 90% of the industry decline in dollars sold, actually 92% to be exact here. Equipment is, all the hard goods for snow business there in the middle, which at the top line level has seen about, a $13 million decline in dollars sold so far this season. And then accessories, the smallest segment there at the bottom, this includes your sunglasses and your backpacks, as well as your sports equipment bags. It's the lone super category to chart growth for this season to date. And I'll let you know that that growth is entirely attributed to technical backpacks, and we'll explore that more in detail in just a few slides. So talking first about snow industry apparel performance, because it is far and away the driver of our industry declines so far this season. 2 seasons ago in the fall of 2018, or end of year 2018, outerwear and therefore total apparel had a really, really strong season. It was driven by early season cold, snow, good snow, early snowfalls across the US. The business there was up, a record high of like 30%. But in the last 2 years, weather and, the weather dependent sales haven't been able to comp the, 2018 performance that we saw. So insulated outerwear, which is, far and away the largest apparel category by dollars sold. It's the quickest to grow when weather hits, but it's also the most vulnerable category when temperatures and snowfalls are more mild the way that they've been the last 2 seasons. So couple this with the pandemic trends, which, have disproportionately affected the soft goods businesses like apparel, which certainly rely more heavily on consumer shopping in store. And we can see why the top line declines are so significant. So insulated outerwear so far this season in this chart of dollars sold and the 2-year trend loss, insulated outerwear accounts for $462 million. Sweatshirts just behind that, $404 million. And sweatshirts have actually, been the go-to category. This is somewhat fashion driven, but then also, again, more mild temperatures, driving people to purchase, away from insulated outdoor purchases and into some of the other sportswear segments. So despite the declines that we're seeing in the market and particularly within insulated outerwear, brands can still gain share of the market and share of consumer spending in a declining market. So this is one of the key reasons that it's so important to keep your eye on the ball and on market share, and not just whether or not your internal sales numbers are growing or declining. So for half of the brands on this list, the dollars sold in the market actually declined, absolute dollars, but they were still able to gain share of the insulated outerwear market. The number one being Patagonia, there at the top of the list, gained a full $3 share points so far this season. Private label is just behind that. And then, Carhartt, Helly Hansen, Mountain Hardwear, Obermeyer, Cotopaxi, Outdoor Research, Arc'teryx, several other brands that are core to our snow outerwear market have fared better and have gained some share of the market despite those declines that we saw in dollars sold. Headwear and handwear are two categories that have also seen some challenges alongside the rest of apparel. But they're two categories that are pretty heavily dependent on snow and cold, similar to insulated outerwear. We did see some significant growth in certain areas here. And with the exception of Carhartt, the positive headwear brand performance that I've charted on the left, this was almost entirely COVID-19 driven. The top growing items from each of these brands being neck gaiters and face masks. So you can see Buff is there at the top of the list, really far and away the leader in terms of market share gains so far this season. And just to let you know, that happened, beginning earlier in the year. We tracked this in the outdoor industry, and then, we're tracking it, starting with August data in snow industry as well. And then in both headwear and handwear, unlike almost all of the other apparel categories that we track in our data, private label was not among the top 2 or 3 brands that added share of the market this year. In handwear, they did make the list, but they were further down the line, and they shared those market gains with brands like Gordini, Hestra, Dakine, Black Diamond, and then also Outdoor Research. Okay, so now let's turn our attentions to accessories and equipment businesses. So overall, as we saw in the super category performance slide that I shared at the beginning, that the first 4 months of the season haven't been much better for equipment. We did see some declines at the top line level, and accessories being the lone category to post growth. And I mentioned that I'll dive into backpacks a little bit more to explore that trend. Despite the top line declines that we saw in equipment, they were really being driven by the major categories of Alpine and Snowboard. So we'll look at that. But then there's also several segments of the snow market that are experiencing tremendous growth right now. So I'm going to explore each of those. I'm going to talk first about those market segments that are really hot, many of which have doubled in size this early season. And then I'll touch on, what's been not so hot out there. So accessories business, again, was the only super category to post growth of dollars sold so far this season. That, accounts for sunglasses, technical backpacks, and sports equipment bags. And the growth is entirely attributable to technical backpacks performance. This segment is showing 59% growth in dollars sold season to date. It's up 26% in units and 27% in average selling price. Just 4 brands accounted for 95% of the dollar growth of technical backpacks. And this was because the highly technical and high cost avalanche airbag packs are where the increases are coming from. So the average selling price of an Avi pack, gaining share this season ranges from a low of, $300, almost $400 to a high of around $1,000 per unit. So this is one of several categories I highlight that are being driven by backcountry and side country activity. as a lot of winter sports participants are looking to get outside but stay away from crowds. Shown here are the Avi packs with the highest dollar share so far this season, and which are also the items that have gained the most share over last season. So these are the styles that are really out in front of the crowd. Backcountry Access takes the top 2 spots with the Float 32 and 22-liter packs. Black Diamond has the 3rd and 4th spots with their Jet Force Tour 26-liter, and then the Jet Force Pro 25-liter. And then the last being Scott's Patrol E140 pack kit. And now let's look at what's trending in the equipment categories. So Sports Racks market has actually doubled in size in dollars sold, up 120%. Units are up 39%, and average selling price has grown 60%. We saw this happening in the wider outdoor industry, market that we track through the summer. So as a lot of consumers were looking for, like I said, those safe activities in the outdoors, they needed to transport their gear. And in the period of August through November, which is what we're tracking here compared to prior year, we've seen, that significant growth out of dollars. Just as in tech packs, the top 5 items by dollars sold are also the ones that are adding the most new dollars to the market. And each of these are rooftop cargo boxes. So compared with other segments of sports racks like rack parts and load bars, cargo boxes are most certainly carrying the highest ASP. And each of these top sellers garner an ASP between $550 and $750. So while units grew an admirable 39%, these big ticket items really equated to that much higher dollar growth of 120%. And there at the bottom, I thought Thule's messaging was particularly on point for those of us that are really trying to avoid the base lodges and operate as best as possible out of our vehicles. Alpine Touring equipment. This segment of the market has gotten a lot of press since last season. So dollars overall have grown 91%. Units not far behind with 76% growth. And average selling price is up 9%. So the notable growth really began 2 seasons ago with bindings, AT bindings. Those were being driven by the shift model that's offered by Salomon, Atomic, and Armada. But then last season, we saw that growth shift out of bindings and into boots. So the consumers that, maybe purchased those bindings the season prior were looking to upgrade their boots last season. And that's really also panned out so far this season. So you can see almost the same size bindings and boots in terms of dollars sold so far this season. And 130% growth makes boots accountable for almost half of the new dollars added to the category so far this season. Backcountry Accessories is another business that we've seen double in size of dollars sold so far this season. Dollars are up 104%. Units have grown 78%, and average selling price, you can see there, is up 14%. So here I've charted dollars sold and percent change by segment for this season to date versus last, because at this point last season, almost every backcountry accessory segment was down in the mid-teens percent change over the previous year for both dollars and units sold. But at the end of last season, when resorts closed down early and everyone really headed into the backcountry, that's when this category really began to see a lot of action, and that action hasn't slowed, as you can see so far this season. News from the field is that inventory in some of these key growth markets or key growth segments is starting to wane, and it's getting difficult to replenish. But as of November, we haven't yet seen that be a hindrance in terms of dollars and units sold. So skins are up 150% so far this season. Beacon 72%. Other backcountry accessories has doubled. That's up 106%. And then shovels 62% and probes 137%. So really tremendous growth. And these are all, really, or a few, several of these are key safety categories. So it's great to see that the growth that we're seeing out of, the equipment to get you into the backcountry is also transferring over to the equipment that you need to stay safe in the backcountry. And then Nordic equipment. Nordic equipment is one of the categories that is, stand out among the standout in terms of growth this season, because the growth is double for both dollars and units sold. They've grown almost in tandem with each other, 117% growth in dollars and 111% growth in units, with an average selling price of just 3%. So on the left, I've charted dollars sold by segment this season to date, as well as last season. And then on the right, I've done the same for units sold. So you can see that skis have the highest percent change, then followed by boots, then poles, and then bindings. And this is really, although the numbers change slightly, it's really on par and follows the same sequence for both dollars and for units. And this really makes sense too, that Nordic, which, is a more approachable discipline than backcountry skiing and snowboarding, that this segment would enjoy, more widespread growth as consumers look to be active this winter, but again, remain distant from the crowds. And specifically for, these high growth categories, so looking at Alpine Touring, Backcountry Accessories, and Nordic equipment that are allowing consumers to get outside but stay socially distanced, we're seeing specialty lead the way in dollars sold so far this season. Internet sales really kicked off the growth, but as we moved further into the season, particularly into November, consumers increasingly moved in store to find these goods. Specialty in-store shopping typically does garner the highest share of dollars sold for winter sports equipment. So that's not really surprising to see, but consumers' apprehension to shopping in store this year, and certainly that learned habit of, getting everything virtually that we need online may have been that driving factor for what we saw early season growth in internet sales for these fast trending categories. So looking at the share of growth that I've charted here by channel, you can see that in August, 100% of the growth in these segments came from the snow internet channel. So growth being the new dollars that were added to the market. And then by November, where we saw the biggest jump in new sales in terms of the number of dollars added, was in November, and that largest share of those dollars came certainly from specialty in-store business, followed by snow internet and snow chain. Snowshoes is another category with considerable market growth this season to date. The business has grown 141% in dollars sold. It's up 89% in units and 28% in average selling price. And what I've charted for you here is a look at how that performance shakes out by channel. So snow chain isn't where we typically see the higher share of growth for categories within equipment. But for this less technical, more approachable snowshoe market, we did see 50% of the $10 million in growth come from snow chain retailers. A lesser 40% came from the specialty market, and then 10% of the growth came from the internet channel. It's important to note that single managements can in our data be split between the specialty and the internet buckets. So for dollars sold in store, brick and mortar, those sit within the specialty row, and then the dollars sold online by those same dealers would sit within the internet row. So bear that in mind when we're talking about channel performances here for the industry. So now let's talk about two of the largest categories within equipment, being alpine and snowboard equipment. So first up is alpine equipment. Season to date has sold $229 million. These businesses drive the most dollars in equipment sales throughout the season, but they haven't matched those sales to this point that we saw last year. And that's really been the driver of the top line equipment declines that we saw when we were looking at the super category breakout at the very beginning. So here I've started dollar share and then share of those dollar declines. You can see that skis are at the top for Alpine equipment. They account for nearly half of all dollars sold. That's 48%. And skis accounted for 22% of the declines this season. So skis still faring pretty well. It's the second line there, Alpine boots, which typically are just 37% of the category share of dollars sold. But they've been responsible for 60% of the category declines so far this season. And this makes a lot of sense, as folks want to be fitted by, a knowledgeable specialty shop oftentimes before they make a new boot purchase. For some consumers, being in close proximity to sales staff for those fittings, it just may be too uncomfortable, and they could be foregoing that purchase for now. So, as we start to get a handle on infection rates and things like that, hopefully, we'll start to see this battle back. And then in snowboard equipment, dollars declined 6%, units fell 9%, and average selling price grew 4%. So snowboard equipment season to date is a $120 million business. Looking at what took place, the next level down, we track snowboards, snowboard boots, and snowboard bindings. We see that snowboards were the lone segment to see dollars grow. And we'll look more deeply at that on the next slide. But similar to Alpine equipment, boots were the biggest driver of snowboard equipment declines. The segment fell 20% in dollars sold. And although not charted here, I'll tell you the same percent decline was recognized in units sold. So really there was no big influence of average selling price on that. And then looking specifically at snowboards, backcountry is again the positive influence on the market here. So the snowboard segments that we track are all mountain, free ride, freestyle, and split board. And the first three have all seen slight declines in dollars sold through November, but no big drops for any of those three. All mountain, which is the bulk of the board sold, it fell just 4%. And that was driven by a decline in average selling price because units were actually up 0.5%. Freeride dropped 2% in dollars despite a 3% growth in units. And again, that was due to a declining ASP as well. And then freestyle, the third one down there, it fell 4% in both units and dollars sold. So no big significant changes in these disciplines. But what is significant is the growth we're seeing out of split boards down there at the bottom. They account for less than 5% of the board units sold. But the dollar growth so far this season is 181%. Unit growth is actually fairly matched with that too, 147% growth in units sold of split boards. So the absolute dollars added from this segment really has succeeded in offsetting those dollars lost from the other three. So proving that, even small segments of the market can have a big impact. Okay, so now let's talk about what we're hearing, in the virtual trade show aisles from our retailers, and then also we'll hear some industry guidance on data use from your peers. Retailer feedback these last couple of weeks have been, a bit of a mixed bag. So some people are saying that, nothing's going well and revenues are down 30 to 40%. And then others say that consumer demand is good and everything is moving and sales are off the charts. So a really big chasm between some of the feedback that we're hearing. Inventory, though, was something that was brought up by several retailers across the board with feedback that, it's been a struggle to keep stock and that they're worried that they won't have inventory to support late season selling. Other struggles and concerns that we're hearing from retailers relate to, good help is still hard to find despite some, higher rates of unemployment right now. And then, concerns definitely about potential complications from, rising COVID rates that we're seeing. I think a lot of fears that, resorts could be shut down again. That's, I think, on a lot of folks' minds across the industry. And then the last thought I highlighted here is the uncertainty around forecasting. One of the retailers, said, I'm not sure how I'm going to forecast to next year or forecast for next year because this has been such an unorthodox year. And I think this is a great segue into the last section of our session, which is on, guidance of data usage from your peers in the industry, because certainly when you don't know where to turn to, data is where you should be looking. Alex Draper is vice president of product for K2 Sports, and he shared that he uses the data as a gut check against his own sales information and understanding the direction of the market. Alex Kutches, VP at Mystery Ranch, he shared that the data is essential to their product team in building out market appropriate programs and also to their sales team. They actively share the data around their brand velocity, as well as market share gains with their customers. Let's look at some other ways to integrate and implement the data. Jenny Taylor, she's the VP of marketing at Solomon. She'll tell you that she used the data to track and validate the success of an 18-month women's initiative that they had, focused to grow their women's business, and how she used the data to future forecast and assign resources to that program going forward. And then Laurie Thomas is the Senior Director of Marketing at Danner and Lacrosse. And she shared with me that watching shifts in sell-through help them better understand where the consumer is engaging with their brands, and that having the data to see the consumer responding to the market provides contagious momentum. And from a brand that has shown much success across market channels, Brad Miller, the director of key accounts at Obermeyer, he testified to the value of fact-based data insights over opinion, and that their broad use of sell-through data across their organization has been instrumental in actioning on opportunities in the market. So those are just some feedback from your peers on ways you can take this data and use it to make better business decisions. If you're at all uncertain on how to get access to these insights that I've shared today, start with Steph at SIA. She can provide you with the information related to SIA membership as well as reports. And if you want to get beyond the top line insights and really start to harness the power of brand and item level data, Julia Day at NPD is my colleague that you want to reach out to. You can reach her by phone or email there. And then if you have any questions on today's data or you want to access this presentation, please feel free to reach out to me directly. My email is here. And then specifically, if you're a retailer or you're interested in how to bring these insights into your business, please reach out to my colleague, Ed Ray, and he'll be sure to take care of all of you retailers that have interest there. So with that, I hope that all of you enjoyed today's webinar. Let me know in the comment section if you have any questions, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.